All right. Hello, everybody. Thanks for tuning in tonight for our little bit of a departure of our regularly scheduled programming. Justin is off watching some wrestling tonight, so I have elected to solo stream. Um, and this is kind of something I've been toying around with the idea of doing for quite a while. Wanted to I talk about Path of Exile a lot, um, and I think making a guide about one of the characters that I played in a league could be fun and interesting and challenging for me to do, um, and kind of like get me out of my comfort zone of streaming board game stuff. So, yeah. Uh, so for this last league, that's 3.16, 3.16, also known as Scourge, the Path of Exile Scourge League. I have been playing Boneshatter Juggernaut. So, good evening, guys. Thanks for hanging out. So, all right, now this all of these caveats apply here. This is my first build guide, and I wanted to see what making Path of Exile content would look like. Just because I didn't exactly know what I was going to have to prepare for coming into this. I had the idea to put together some slides about an hour before I started streaming, so I whipped up some quick slides right here just to kind of start the presentation, and give me something foundational to work with. And yesterday I downloaded OBS and experimented with it for the first time, and so I've got a little bit of game footage to show you a little bit later on, that doesn't necessarily look that great, and the limitations of my computer kind of really show in those recordings, but it's enough that you've got some actual gameplay to look at. I also did want to start with this. If anybody views this on YouTube, if you were new to the channel or anything like that, I did want to explain why I enjoy Path of Exile in particular to begin with, since I have no other body of work for you to look at. Path of Exile has one of the... I'm going to go out there and say it's probably got the largest selection of possible playable archetypes of any action RPG I've ever played, let alone any game, right? So the game is updated regularly. About every 3 months, you've got new content to go look at. So even if a particular league doesn't resonate with you, you can always check back in 3 months and give it another shot, just to see what's up. I also find myself constantly thinking about the game, even when I'm not playing it. And there are times where I feel like I have improved my character by taking a measure twice, cut once approach to it. Sitting down, really thinking what I want from the game, what kind of approach I want to use for whatever the next goal that I set for myself is. So you're just constantly engaging with the game because of the number of options that are there. And importantly, it also scratches a gambling itch. I love poker, blackjack. I love like actual casino gambling and stuff like that. And this game has a lot of items in it that are worth currency in the game, and you get to really you can hit some jackpots if you allow yourself to get lucky. So yeah, there's a lot of things in this game that I really enjoy, and it just I constantly being brought back to the game over and over again. So I'm gonna do a quick overview of the build, the Boneshatter Strength Stacking short for Juggernaut. So I wanted to tackle the strengths and weaknesses, kind of like an overview of the character. And then I've got Path of Building ready to show you how I leveled the character. And then we'll probably keep using Path of Building to talk about the links and the gear. And I'll probably take a break or two in there to show you off some of the gameplay. So one of the major strengths of this character when I first started the league was that it comes online very early, and you're using the stuff that you're going to use at the end game. The Pillar of the Cage God is your core weapon for this build, and it's equipable from the teens. Um, and there are some unique armor pieces that I use in this build that are cheap, and as such, you can get corrupted versions of those or more powerful versions of those uniques very cheaply in Trade League. Um, if you've never played a Juggernaut in Path of Exile before, there's a lot of things that Juggernaut gives you for free, or gives you for being a Juggernaut, not necessarily for free. You're trading off the DPS that some of the other ascendancies would give you, but Jug just lets you ignore a wide swath of mechanics of the game, which is a lot of fun. So now, this is a melee playstyle, and as such, that is not for every character. There are cowards who would prefer to kill their enemies from afar instead of using the satisfying crunch of a melee weapon. So this is not a playstyle for people who use weapons of the cowards. It's not a super fast build, and there's not a lot you could do to make this build much faster either, right? So there are faster builds out there. That's just a fact, and I'm not going to pretend like this is going to be one of those, right? The current iteration of this build that I have, chaos damage is particularly bad news. I've got a El Hasmin kill that I'll show you. That'll show you how bad chaos damage is for the character. All right, so let me show you some mapping with the character just so you can see the play style of it. This was recorded yesterday. This is one of my first attempts at recording here. But as you can see, you just get to dive right into piles of characters, and this is kind of choppy at the beginning. You get to dive right into piles of characters, and you'll notice that the health bar doesn't really move. This build has lots of recovery and lots of mitigation. And you get to Boneshatter is a skill that was added last league, and the way it works is that you hit an enemy, and if it stuns them, they will have a shock wave emanate from them. And so you'll notice in some of these packs that you'll hit one character and a lot of characters will die, or one enemy, a lot of enemies will just explode. The Scourge mechanic is kind of being showed off a little bit there. So yeah, that is true. Now I have not cleaned up my loot filter, Bill, and I have not cleaned up I play with the mini map overlay on top of me here. So we got, I think we got a little bit of boss DPS here. You can see just taking huge chunks out of the boss's life. This is a tier 15 map. It is rare, I believe. So just to give you an idea of the difficulty of it. But yeah, that's some tier 15 map gameplay right there. Let's swap over to the leveling guide real quick. So this is a really early tree that I would prioritize. Two things that are very important. The Boneshatter is a strike skill, and for a long time in Path of Exile, playing a strike skill has been a chore. But there are a couple of recent additions. Tribal Fury has been on the tree for several leagues now. It's been around for a while, and it essentially lets you strike an extra target with a skill. And there is a war cry called Ancestral Cry that will let you summon essentially two Shadow Chieftain clones of yourself to strike as well. So you can use this keystone Call to Arms combined with Tribal Fury to make sure that you get to target a lot of extra units. Now it combines with Boneshatter nicely. If you have a pack of 10 mobs and you attack, you will hit 4 of them. And if you do enough damage, you will stun 4 of them. And those 4 will do the Boneshatter explosion. And so the explosion will wipe out the rest of the pack. So this was a known build. This was a theory crafted build. It was pretty widely popular in the last league, but it has fallen off in popularity moving into this league because there were a lot of changes to the tree and stuff like that. And this build was not a this build was not that popular this league. So yeah, if you were looking at like player base, it's like maybe 0.5% of the players were playing this build. So yeah, no, I should caveat there. This was a build that I was aware of, but I didn't know the specifics of. But some of the gear and some of the choices I've made are options I went with. And I should also mention that I have almost chosen budget options for a lot of this. There are ways to make this build more expensive, which I will cover after I cover the build. I should crash Zerker. Yeah, so Zerker is a ascendancy that requires a different mindset. You have to accept the fact that you're probably going to die several times with playing a Berserker character. Now, my Juggernaut has a lot of deaths. That's because I spent a lot of time figuring out what I liked about the build and what I didn't like. But I did level my character to 100. This is the first league that I've actually leveled a character to 100. So, all right. So I had to do quite a bit of grinding without dying to get to 100. So this is the early build, and this is essentially online at level 27 or so. I do recommend killing helping Alira, the bandit, because she'll give you some resists, which are important, and the crit strike multiplier is nice. And the mana regen is actually not irrelevant either. The mana changes in the last patch kind of necessitate you to invest some amount of mana mitigation. Otherwise, you just won't be able to use your abilities nearly as fast. You'll be limited. A lot of abilities can attack fast enough that you'll be limited by your mana more so than, like, say, your attack speed. So now, just some other Pantheon advice. I'm sorry, not Pantheon. Ascendancy advice. The first ascendancy that I would take would be Unflinching. This is going to help you mitigate the Boneshatter damage. Boneshatter does damage to your character when you use it. It was designed with Juggernauts in mind. So attacking with Boneshatter will actually trigger your Unflinching keystone, which will let you gain 1 endurance charge every second if you've been hit. And so when you attack with Boneshatter, you will then gain an endurance charge every second after that. Now, there's a chance with this keystone as well that when you gain endurance charges, you'll go to your maximum endurance charges. And endurance charges give you the ability to mitigate physical damage. Every endurance charge will reduce physical damage done to your character by 4%. And so getting this early is very nice. This means you will do less damage to yourself when you're using your attack. The next ascendancy that I recommend is Undeniable. This is your only damage node that you'll take in this or in your ascendancy. So once you get to level 55 and you're going into the second labyrinth, this is the node that I would take because this is where your damage is going to come from. Once you take this, you can then move into crit. easier. If you are not aware of how critical strikes work in Path of Exile, accuracy for melee characters is tied like hand in hand with critical strike. You can attack an enemy, hit them, you have to confirm your critical strike based off of your accuracy. So you really want to have accuracy if you're planning on critting enemies. And since we're going to be using a staff, the real upside to using a staff is being able to crit with it. Your third ascendancy should be Unbreakable. This also combos with Boneshatter because 1.5% of the physical damage prevented from hits is regenerated as life for the past 10 seconds. So, of all the damage that you do to yourself, when you're preventing it, that damage then turns into health regen for you. So your character actually has very quick health recovery, which is kind of what leads to it being pretty tanky. The final node that I would take is Unstoppable. This is a very awesome quality of life node. It also makes it so that you can't be stunned. With this node plus Unbreakable and the endurance charges, there are quite a few things in the game that we can face tank. So yeah, if you want the feeling of playing a character that can just waltz through enemies, smashing them to pieces with staves, this is the setup that you can do right here. Now, other players may want to mess around with the Unyielding node, but so I have opted for the Unstoppable node over the Unyielding one, and I'll explain more once we get to the actual damage section. So we are one of the core weapons that we're going to use in the game is Pillar of the Caged God, and Pillar of the Caged God gives you 16% increased physical weapon damage per 10 strength that your character has. So this is the strength stacking aspect of this build. Really early on, I would select this wheel right here. It's not too far from your Tribal Fury and your Call to Arms. This wheel right here makes your strength for this build much more effective. And so just pathing around with this build, all these strength points right here, these end up being increased damages for your build. I would pick up this life nodes, this armor node right here. This armor node helps you mitigate the damage you do to yourself with Boneshatter. Once you've got Undeniable, you want to start picking up the crit nodes. We're actually going to bypass this melee crit node down here, but we'll come over here and we'll grab this two-handed crit node because that lets us path closer to this endurance charge, and we could save a couple of pathing points. One thing that I'll say about the tree has changed significantly with this league. There are these cool new masteries that exist on the tree now that weren't there before. When you take the nodes leading up to a notable on a wheel, you can then take a mastery for a passive point afterwards. And this mastery on the Tribal Fury wheel lets you say strike skills which target additional enemies can do so from 30% further away. So this means that we don't actually have to be terribly close to what we're attacking. This is pretty good so that you don't have to be precise with your clicking. You can even be facing the wrong way. This is actually very good for endgame bossing DPS because you don't have to face the boss head on to hit him with your weapon. You just move, attack, and the strike clone that summons to attack will attack the enemy, and will do so from even further than away than you would normally have to be. I like picking up these nodes down here. We've got a little bit of life, and Art of the Gladiator combines with our Unstoppable node. Art of the Gladiator makes it so that the innate movement penalty that exists on all pieces of armor in this game no longer penalize your character's movement. And then with this means we can't be slowed beneath our base movement speed. So this often means you can just run right through chilling areas. You can, all the stuff that slows you in the game, all that stuff, you get to blitz right through it when we combine these two. So your character isn't the fastest, but your character doesn't ever feel like it ever gets slowed down. So oh yeah, you got to make choices about how many nodes you're going to use. So this crit wheel over here is pretty good. Now, part of the reason that we want to select the stuff over here is for an endgame jewel that we'll select in a bit. But we want to cluster all the stuff over here because we're going to put something into this jewel socket where we're going to get we're going to get a lot of extra juice from. All right. I passed over here. I took this node and this. If you wanted to play more defensive, you can actually select the staff block nodes instead of the damaging nodes on this side. But this staff node over here, counterweight, is one of our like most potent damaging nodes on the tree. We get to move over here. We get to pick up this endurance charge here. We get to swing over here. We can pick up these. We get to pick up the staff damaging nodes right here. And then finally, we get to swoop all the way around over to here to pick up Serpent Stance and pick up Might. This 30-point node right here is very good with our Pillar of the Caged God. Now, they've changed the way mana reservation works. They changed the way mana reservation works this league, and so it's better for single character. It's now possible to run more auras on your character than you used to be able to. So I recommend picking up this wheel right here and picking up these nodes down here. These give us some aura effect, and they also give us some mana reservation. And you can take the reservation mastery of increased mana reservation efficiency of skills. And this will let us work in an extra aura or two. So this was the skeleton right here. This is a level 82 tree. So this, once you've taken all of this stuff, you're pretty deep into the end game. But for the most part, you can pick up like the staff crit nodes, and the life and the melee crit nodes, and your damage is going to be pretty good. Just for cruising through the campaign, it's not going to be insane, but it'll be pretty good. So we're going to exit out of that one. So that I can show you the completed in-game tree. So this is the tree at 100. And you'll notice some slight changes to this tree, but that's because it uses some of the in-game gear and some stuff that is a little bit more expensive than you would have necessarily when you first get to mapping. Now, this jewel down here, we're going to put a lethal pride in this. The timeless jewels were added in Legion, and it doesn't matter which. There's actually 3 timeless jewels per. So there's 3 different types of lethal pride, basically. It doesn't matter which one you have. There's like Rakia.com and one other one that I can't remember right now, but it doesn't matter because we're not taking the notable that the jewel gives. What we're doing is lethal pride adds strength to every node, to every small passive on the tree in this area. So the pathing nodes get extra strength, and the ones that are like the small passives on wheels get +4 strength. So one lethal pride will give us a lot of extra strength, which lets us increase the amount of staff damage that we're going to do. The lethal pride, so you can use a divine orb on lethal pride to change the number right there, the 1,795 warriors under Rakiata. That number will change whenever you use a divine orb on it, and it'll change from Rakiata to Calm, or and so the large passive notables will gain an ability that is unique to Lethal Pride. And Lethal Pride has a list of them. When you're using Path of Building, you can right click on a node and it'll tell you like which one you can use. So the Lethal Pride that I just rolled it randomly with divine orbs. I was trying to find like a better one. The Lethal Pride that I have down here is actually insane, but what we're looking for is increased strength and flat strength. So this node has plus 20 strength, and this node has 5% increased strength. And this all helps us towards our strength stacking. This particular Lethal Pride had 3 different nodes that had 15% melee crit strike multiplier on it. So the Lethal Pride also, for me, has 45% crit multiplier, which is just kind of bonkers. And it also came with some armor here, which is not irrelevant with the changes to armor. The elemental damage is a problem for this build because it's very good at mitigating melee damage, but it's not good at mitigating elemental damage. So we invest a little bit on the tree to get bonuses to our maximum elemental resistances with Soul of Steel and the Prismatic Skin down here. This makes it so that lightning damage, there's a lot of lightning damage in Scourge. Lightning damage, fire damage, and cold damage do less total damage to us. And this armor mastery right here, 30% reduced damage from crit strikes, is very nice. It'll let you survive some spiky damage that comes in. The mastery for this is plus 5 strength per allocated mastery passive. You have to actually do some math on this because there is also a percentage increased attributes as well as the plus 5 per. So you actually have to have enough masteries for the plus 5 per mastery to outweigh the percentage increased strength. So just a little bit of math that you have to do. Finally, I think this, moving around the tree, Intuitive Leap is really good right here if you plan on using Two-Handed Impale. Yeah, this is my true love, Path of Exile. This Intuitive Leap right here actually lets you save a lot of passive points. You get to save these life nodes right here, you get to save these impale nodes right here, and you get to save this passive point right here. So this lets you take all these notables. I ended up gaining 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 passive points that I could go elsewhere in the tree. Typically a 4% life nodes are not mathematically as worth it as other stuff, right? Because we've got like a 6% life node right here that we could take instead, right? So that gives us more life, since we don't really care about like the elemental resistances on it. So Intuitive Leap, with the new passive changes, Intuitive Leap I think is pretty strong right here. We care about the endurance charge because of our notable, or sorry, because of our ascendancy. Thread of Hope right here. There's no longer an insane Thread of Hope that you can put here, but you can put a pretty good Thread of Hope here that lets you take this node right here. Everything in this ring can be allocated without having to be connected to the tree. So that lets us also save more passive points that we can allocate elsewhere. This counterweight is the big pick here. You could also equip this Whirling Barrier right here to give you a little bit more extra block chance. But being able to take this node right here that's got the mana efficiency and the increased effect of it, you can also skip a bunch of nodes down here so that you can take Divine Fervor, which is pretty good for this build. It gives you some crit strike chance, gives you some strength, gives you some attack damage. It's just all stuff that works for you. But this is level 100. There are quite a few nodes that you don't have to take. I have taken this accuracy wheel down here because it combines with the undeniable from Juggernaut. And I've taken the precision mana reservation because this lets me run a level 20 precision instead of having to settle for like a lower level precision, and it doesn't take up all of my mana. Looking at the gear, I've mentioned Pillar of the Caged God, but yeah, once again, this is core to the build. The build just is built around this weapon, so it hangs out here, and it is what we're going to use. You could corrupt Pillar of the Caged God to get rid of the chance to block, in favor of, say, like Fortify. I think you can get Fortify in staves. Um, there's some corruptions that you could go for. The block chance is totally fine though. You're gonna end up trading some sort of survivability for damage if you swap out the block chance. I also use Alberon's Warpath. The Alberon's Warpath that I use are corrupted to have +1 to maximum endurance charges on it to bring us to a total of 8 endurance charges. As far as gloves go, I use Meganord's Vice. It has 100 strength on it, and it also lets you regenerate some of your life. You can find a pair that are corrupted to have vulnerability on hit as a curse on them for pretty cheap. Meganord's Vice is a very common unique. The problem with, like, say, Meganord's Vice is that finding somebody who will actually trade it to you for the 1 alch that it is worth is the difficulty, other than, like, say, actually finding these, right? These are so common that they're worth nothing and people don't think it's worth their time to trade them. Now, you can find the curse on hit vulnerability. I think I bought these for 30 chaos. They're probably even cheaper than that now by this point in the league. Our helmet is Abyssus. You really want to try to have as high of a crit strike multiplier on it as you can, and the increased physical damage, you want that as low as possible. So this actually does make us take more damage from our own ability, which is why the endurance charges and having armor are so important. It reduces the damage that is done to us. But you'll notice, looking at this, Abyssus is 37% of our damage, which is quite a bit of damage. So now the body armor that I'm using just has increased strength on it. This is an Elder chest piece. There's a couple different options that you can do with this. This is actually even a budget option. I think I bought this chest piece for like 30 chaos. The most important thing is that you kind of want to stack a life on it, and you want percentage increase strength on it, because that'll end up, if you can get flat strength on it, that's also pretty good. But that's, you gotta kind of get lucky, and you might pay more if it's got both the increased by a percentage and the flat strength on it. Our amulet is Astramentus. Pillar of the Caged God also makes it so that we gain attack speed for dexterity. So Astramentus, you'll see, accounts for about 20% of our DPS, because it gives us 100, more than 100 to all of our attributes. So we actually get quite a bit of attack speed from this, in addition to a pile of strength. Astramentus is, it can be like a little bit pricey at league start, but I have tried to create a strength stacking amulet, and I cannot make one that is as good as Astramentus. I will get one that is like a 0.2% DPS decrease, or like a 1 point DPS increase, but will leave me short on my other attributes. So I have anointed Master of Blades on it. Master of Blades is in the shadow area here. This gives us 30 strength, increased physical damage, and overwhelm physical damage. This is, as you can see, it ends up being a fair amount of damage. It ends up being a fair amount of damage. I think it's like an 8% damage increase when all is said and done. Yeah. Let's look at the anoint. It's not if we remove Master of Blades and we add it to it. Yeah. Combined damage 10%. Yeah, so there you go. It ends up being a pretty significant DPS increase. There's a couple different options. You could anoint Whispers of Doom to get an extra curse. That is totally an option. You would have to find another source of curses. We get to use our gloves for free. They don't cost any mana. My rings are where I actually round out my resists. We're mostly looking for life, flat fizz to attacks, strength, and resists, which is actually a pretty tall order. You can find ones that don't have optimum rolls for pretty cheap, but if you were to try to find like the perfect rings, you're probably going to be paying through the nose for them. I haven't upgraded my rings in forever. I think I've had these rings for several weeks now, but it's just because they patch a lot of holes that are in the build. We've also got this belt is actually pretty expensive. This is an 18% increased synthesized belt. This was like the earliest, most expensive thing that I bought. There are budget options instead for this belt. That aren't going to be as good, and I actually need to like recraft this belt at some point to try to make it better. I ended up settling because I hit like a couple of rolls that I was looking for, so I just went with it. We've got a lot of room for flasks here. We got a lot of room. This diamond flask, I use one, but it's because it's a placeholder for bottled faith. Bottled faith would end up being like a huge amount of let's take a look real quick. If we were to equip this, bottled bottled faith is. It looks like it gives us we have to configure it so that the enemy is on consecrated ground. There we go. So yeah, bottled faith is like a 20% DPS increase. But at the same time, bottled faith is very expensive. It's not a budget option. That's part of the part of the reason why I use a regular sulfur flask is because consecrated ground got buffed in this last patch to reduce the effectiveness of curses. Bottled faith is, as Andrew points out, it is nerfed, right? Like it is less powerful than it was. It's pretty funny. So consecrated ground reduces the effectiveness on curses on you, which makes running them a little bit more comfortable, and it also gives you 6% life regen, which helps us mitigate the damage that we can do to ourselves with Boneshatter. I covered the jewels that I had. If you're looking for budget jewels, mostly what you're looking for is life, crit strike multiplier, flat strength. All of those are good for your build. This jewel is actually kind of nutty. It's a synthesized implicit jewel that has attack leech on it. I kept tossing this into harvest, trying to hit mana leech to go with the attack leech on it, so that way I could have attack and mana leech on the same jewel. But I ended up hitting life and 2 crit strike multipliers on it, so I settled for this jewel right here. We actually use Conqueror's efficiency plus an Aileron mod, so running scripts that auto. So yes, what they added were called instilling flasks, and there's also enkindling orbs, and they both try to combat the overuse of flasks in 2 different ways. instilling orbs essentially let you automate your flasks. You can say, use this flask when its charges are full. And what I actually did, I've got placeholder flasks in here, but this Center Sulfur Flask of the Conger is actually a pretty good example. This says, gain 5 charges when you are hit by an enemy. So as you saw from the gameplay earlier, this character is constantly being hit by enemies, so it's constantly gaining charges. I put instilling orbs on all of my flasks that say use when they are full. So between killing enemies and being hit, my flasks are constantly filling up. Enkindling orbs will increase the duration of the flask, but you can't gain charges while the flask is in use. So it makes the flask better, but it requires some restraint so that you're not constantly spamming the key with it. Okay, so that is the gear. Let's cover the links real quick. So Boneshatter, right here. This is what we're using. This is the crux of the build right here. It gets some flat damage, and the flat damage is important because it is added to our boomer. can't keep up with it. Yeah. So we get a lot of increased physical damage from Pillar of the Caged God and having a lot of strength. So what we want to do is flat sources of damage will get multiplied by the physical damage on Pillar of the Caged God a lot. So we use Rage as a way to get extra flat damage. When we hit something, we gain Rage. We can only gain Rage every so often, but whenever we hit something, we get to add Rage. So it takes a little while for Rage to come online, especially in boss fights. But once you actually get ramped up, you start hitting things pretty hard. If we go over to the configuration right here, we can actually take a look at our Rage, and you can see what the damage looks like on like 5 Rage versus the full 55 that we can have. So yeah, we lose quite a bit of damage, but our character is built to be tanky, so that way we can survive early on. So yeah, I'll tackle the Q&A after I get through the main link descriptions right here. I use Fortify. You can actually probably use any number of other you could use any number of other links for this. Fortify is not the best damaging link. You could use the staff cluster jewel node Overlord, which lets you fortify instead. And we're actually pathed over here near Steadfast. And there's a new mastery node that lets you say melee hits fortify. It does reduce the number of maximum fortification that you have, but it would let you fortify without having to invest in the tree here. I use Fortify, though, because it makes our character that much more tanky. I also used increased critical strikes because we are impaling. We really want our attacks to be as close to crit strikes as... we want them to be crit strikes as often as they can. So when we've got our power charges up and when we've got our diamond flask active, we're rocking about an 82% crit strike. There are ways to improve that. For instance, you could get flat crit on your Mega Nord's Vice. If you get like a double corrupted one that has melee crit strike chance and curse on hit, that would probably be like pretty awesome. You'd probably you'd creep up closer to 100. You'd probably get to like 90 if you get like the 0.7% chance to crit on your gloves. I also used Awakened Brutality and Awakened Melee Physical Damage. Now, these are not beginner friendly gems. These do drop off of the Awakener or the Conquerors. So I actually had to buy Brutality. It's about 3 exalts, which is not cheap, but you can run regular Brutality and regular melee physical damage until you get these to replace it. But both of these are very, very good. Now, Vengeance is a little bit of tech in this build. Since Boneshatter does damage to ourselves, it will proc Vengeance, which is an ability that happens if we are dealt damage. So you can link Rage to Vengeance. This actually lets us gain Rage at twice the speed that we normally would, because our Vengeance ability is hitting and gaining Rage. It is a separate ability, so it will also gain Rage. And it's not locked to the same Rage rate that the other ability gains. So, we also give it increased critical strike chance, so that it is critting about as often as our Boneshatter is. And we also give it power charge on critical strike. And this right here lets us get power charges, which just increase our crit chance in general. So this is where we get our power charges from. We use the Pride aura, which increases the physical damage that enemies near us would take. We use Dread Banner to help us impale. It increases our impale chance. Impale is an ability that will ultimately increase the amount of physical damage that we do. You'll notice in the calculations over here that our impale DPS is listed right there. So the more and actually, if we increase the quality of Dread Banner, you'll notice that the impale damage goes up, because Dread Banner increases the effect of impale. I use Flesh and Stone and Maim. I use Ancestral Protector as the totem for this build instead of Ancestral Warchief. Both are pretty good. You could have a setup, like a multiple totem setup. I think it works with Ancestral Protector and Ancestral Warchief in the same totem setup. You can summon 3 totems and get the benefit from both of the totems at the same time. I use Skitterbots, where we get to run Skitterbots because of all the mana reservation tricks that we took. Vulnerability comes from our gloves, and then finally Precision, we get to run a level 21 because of the mana reservation stuff that we've taken. Now, one thing that you'll notice from the gameplay stuff, and we'll go back to gameplay. I have got let's see, we'll try this. This is a white map redeemer here. I was recording, so I definitely didn't want to die during the recording. And I was mostly just trying to rush down a Cyrus kill. But you'll see from the recording one piece of technology that I don't have set up in the path of building. There's a jewel called Cast When Damage, or sorry, a gem that's called Cast When Damage Taken. I have that linked to Purifying Flame. This is where the recording is just, you can tell it's like, if I were to edit this stuff, I'd edit down to the point where it's not a slideshow. This is why I don't stream this game, by the way. I think the Redeemer kill is cleaner. Is it all choppy? Is this a terrible recording? Am I bad at recording gameplay? It's a slideshow. All right, I think it's Cyrus kill. We'll go with the Cyrus kill that I did. I think this recorded a little bit easier. I think it still jumps around. Anyway, so I use Purifying Flame tied to Cast When Damage Taken. And what that does is when you hit something with Boneshatter, you do damage to yourself, and you'll cast Purifying Flame at them. And what happens is that this ends up putting consecrated ground down around the arena. So that combined with the flask makes sure that you're essentially always standing on consecrated ground, getting that 6% health regen and the reduced effectiveness of curses. That's one piece of technology that I use just to make sure, especially on longer boss fights, that I've got Purifying Flame everywhere. You may see that during this fight. So Cyrus tries to get me with the stars right there. So this is Awakener 8. I probably should have shown the Atlas, that way you knew that I had all the watchstones in. And you could tell from the beginning here that the fight starts a little slow, because the rage bar. I'm actually my camera is covering the rage bar. Move that over right here for this. So this red bar right here that's filling up, that's the rage bar. There's a lot of downtime in this fight, and you lose rage when you're not damaging enemies and when you haven't been damaged recently. So yeah, it's a little bit of this fight is a little bit annoying. This fight is particularly annoying for melee, because you can just see all of the area effect that he puts down. He's got all those red pools. If you stand in them, will do damage to you. You can see there that the there you go. That right there, that's where the Purifying Flame is being cast off our cast when damage taken. And yeah, to that point, Bill, I'm doing this one as like a trial run. Obviously, I think I'd have to be a little bit more concise than I'm being right now. Kind of went into depth, more so than I think I would do in a YouTube video. I think I would try to be a little bit more concise than I currently am. So yeah, I've considered doing these maybe once a league moving forward, to talk about just maybe my favorite build. So Cyrus, if you haven't fought Cyrus before, Cyrus has 4 phases. This is the 3rd phase, and his mechanics become increasingly difficult as the phases go. He adds more layers to that meteor maze that he had there, and whenever he moves between phases, he summons these clouds, these storms, that do a lot of damage. If you stand in them, they'll just kind of straight up kill you. And I actually have the audio muted because I was watching X-Files, and so you would just be hearing X-Files dialogue if I had the audio going. So this is the final phase of Cyrus. So this is where I think this phase is actually pretty fun. However, if you die in this phase, it's actually really hard to reset. He does this attack right there where he summons these beams, and if you stand in those beams, then you'll take extra damage. That circular attack, he does what's known as the die beam. That's a die beam right there. I got clipped by it a little bit. But the die beam does a lot of damage and does a lot of negative, really bad things to you if you get hit by it. You can see I lost some frames here. This is that right there is a very good moment to get a lot of extra damage on him, because he kind of stands still, and that's like your chance to get some extra damage. I got clipped with the die beam again there. But fortunately, I've got enough resiliency so that it doesn't do a ton of damage to me. Yeah, they do not slow Juggernauts. So if you you actually get to ignore that effect on Juggernauts. If you have to leap slam these correctly, otherwise you will get that debuff on you. and they also increase the amount of damage that you take. So you'll notice I didn't get any like very good loot from them. But yeah, there you go. There's a Sire's kill for you. So this I haven't tried the aspirational content yet. I've got synthesis boss here. I realized that I should record the boss kill. Yeah, this is a synthesis boss. I was able to charge up some rage before getting into this fight, so I wasn't completely on E moving into it. So my damage in this fight is pretty good. You'll notice I'm knocking huge chunks out of this boss. So like that fight was pretty clean. He didn't really get to do much. So yeah, I could imagine spell suppression helps out. That's a new mechanic in this league. But yeah, I imagine spell suppression is very good for Cyrus. I have also got some 10-way fights. That shows right there. It was a 59 or 39 quant. These 10-way boss fights were added about a year ago now, but yeah, you get to fight 10 bosses from the maps at the same time. These are really a lot more interesting than a lot of map boss fights. Yeah, you can make some of these can get pretty hairy. Some of them are easy, but you can make these fights really hard if you wanted to. You could see I could get to chip through one boss at a time pretty easily. The being able to strike multiple enemies also helps this, because you can get like your full DPS on more than one character at the same time. You can see I stood in some mechanics there. I'm triggering these just so that they'll go away, because they put a degen on the ground that has like a limited amount of time to exist. So tripping them, I think, is better than just like letting them sit there. Yeah. So this fight, you do get to see my health bar move quite a bit, but you'll notice that it doesn't just disappear. You can face tank a lot of these mechanics. The elegant round shield, notably, is not a squire. So I've got one more 10-way fight that I'll show off. Then I'll kind of start wrapping up. Yeah, I lost some frames here. Took a lot of damage from Rector. I think this had Fizz as lightning as one of the mods on it. So the mobs that did a lot of physical damage get a lot of extra free lightning damage on them. But they didn't have any life, and they didn't have any like survivability. So a lot of these bosses I absolutely shredded. Just get to completely crush. I will note. I'll go back to my belt in just a second to help show you why my health barely moves, especially while mapping. So the belt that I use, I don't know if I have it on it. Actually, it doesn't actually have it on it. What I did was I got the they made some labyrinth changes a few leagues ago, actually back during Harvest, where you could enchant your belt, and there's a belt enchant that says recover 3% of your life if you have rage on a kill, and for mapping that's just absolutely insane. So yeah, you end up especially porcupines, any of the stuff that has like on death effects that will damage you. You can absolutely just face tank those as well, because you'll kill a pack of enemies. You kill 10 enemies, you regain 30% of your health right there. So, all right. To answer Herp's question from before, we'll go back to this video. Showed off some of the mapping gameplay. So the leagues for Path of Exile are essentially a fresh start for the economy, and it's their way of play testing proposed changes for future in the game. A mechanic in this video, you'll see the Scourge mechanic pop up at some point, but um, you'll play a league based around that mechanic, and you'll get a ton of exposure to that mechanic. And they'll basically collect data about the way people play, what things people liked, what people didn't like about it, and then they will implement that into the game moving forward, um, based off that feedback. So I think it's brilliant, honestly. You are essentially beta testing a mechanic. Now you are beta testing a mechanic in a more or less completed game. So yeah, you get to test out the stuff, and whenever you're playing Path of Exile, something to remember, especially in leagues, is you're playing a copy of the game that will probably never exist again. Um, and there are a series of cosmetic rewards that you can only get in those leagues, by completing league challenges. So that's part of the reason, that's part of the appeal of playing in a new league. So yeah, I appreciate like a fresh start on the game. At this point, my character has currency, right? Like I'm not struggling for gear. I'm level 100. I literally have very few avenues to make my character more powerful. It almost all involves spending currency on gear. So it's not necessarily like I when I'm done with this character, I would never really have a desire to play this character again. So having a new league, having a fresh start, is a lot of fun. Figuring out like the way another character works, as you can see from like the past hour or so. The even a character that just smashes things with the staff will find interesting and mechanics to build around, right? Like I think you could expand this character. You could take Vengeance and make it a 6 link itself. And I don't think you'll necessarily double your DPS, but you will increase your DPS significantly with a by making Vengeance hit harder, because you can use gems like Pulverize and Brutality to get a lot of damage on this build. So excited for PoE 2. So yeah, I think I think PoE 2 is likely to just be all improvements, right? So they had a they've proposed a the way that they're changing the gem system is pretty neat. Not having to 6 links gear anymore is going to be welcome. um that's at right, player herb, right? The big thing about this game is the chase, in my opinion. Because there are some big ticket items. You can have like you'll have leagues where things will drop that are more expensive than everything you've owned in the game combined. Back in Synthesis League, I had a Mirror of Kalandra drop, and it was, at the time, it was worth 150 exalts. And I made this broken, disgusting, degenerate character, that I couldn't spend all of the money that I had tricking that character out. So yeah, it's you'll have different impressions of leagues, and it'll vary from player to player, right? Different things will resonate with you, and it's like it's a fun way to just explore the game. And because there's so many character options in the game, there's always like new ideas that I want to like mess around with. So yeah, I personally, I set goals for myself. I like to hit 36 challenges. They'll put 40 challenges in a league, and then I'll try to hit 36 of them, because that's typically where the last uh, cosmetic unlock is from. So yeah. Now there is a version of this build that is built off of low life, and so that is one way to scale your damage, different than mine. You could get rid of the rage for that. You could actually probably keep rage in. You could keep rage in vengeance. Now I did include this death to show you that chaos damage is bad. I did want to make a point of that, just so that I wasn't showing off me playing only awesome, right? I wanted to show that chaos damage can kill you if you're not paying attention. So but yeah, so yeah, the you could play a low life version of this based off some stuff that was added in Ultimatum, and you could get a bunch of damage from the bloodthirst gem instead of using rage, and you just use rage only in vengeance, where it'll proc for free, and you'll get some, like, you know, random damage increase and movement speed from it there. So all right, that's basically all the content that I had for you for tonight. I think I covered everything I wanted to cover. I may have had some questions. I'm more than willing to talk to you about Path of Exile at any time. So yeah, if you have any questions, if you're watching this on YouTube and you somehow got all the way through this build guide, then I invite you to press subscribe to the channel. So special socket, yeah, so the it's called the Blood Crucible, and the way the Scourge mechanic works is when you in every map you can shift over into the Scourge where you'll fight demons. Whenever the screen went red, you could see back here, right here. So this is fighting Scourge demons right there, and this Blood Crucible up here is telling you how long you've got in the Scourge. And the more demons you kill, the more basically points that you collect from them that you can use to add downsides and upsides to the equipment that you have. And a lot of people don't really necessarily like how hard it is to make your items better by the Scourge mechanic. But for the most part, people love killing things in the Scourge. You'll notice up here in the corner that this number goes up. This number makes them drop better loot and also makes you take more damage from the monsters. So it's kind of a push your luck mechanic. And yeah, so it's a neat mechanic. You can actually Scourge maps, so that the maps get more difficult, but they drop a lot of loot, and you can actually make some really crazy, really rewarding loot from this league. So from the map. So all right, any last questions before I wrap it up? And as far as PoE 2 goes, I'm not expecting PoE 2 before like 2023 at this point. I think they will make it so that PoE 2 comes out before Diablo 4, but because Diablo 4 is so far away that I don't foresee PoE 2 being scrambled and pushed out the door. They're probably going to take their time with it from what we've gathered. They're working their way through the game. They're making the campaign experience of PoE 2 a lot cleaner. So 3.17. They haven't announced it, right? You're just memeing. You're trying to tilt me with Transformers 2024. I could see that. Yeah, I could see that being 2024 before they release it. I'm gonna have to unmod this man if he continues to bring up my Michael Bay's Transformers. All right, yeah. So that is what I've got. I appreciate everybody hanging out tonight. Hopefully this was informative to some people. I did probably cover more mechanics than I meant to cover in this, but I can't help myself. Once I start talking about this game, I just start following threads. So I appreciate once again everybody stopping by. Yeah, I'm gonna wrap it up. So see ya, everybody.